Today's lesson is When the Earth Begins to Shake. Hi, everybody. I'm Roger.
And I'm Helen.
And we're going to continue talking about earthquakes in today's lesson. And last time we were talking about the problem we have with predicting earthquakes. We know earthquakes are going to happen. We'll never be able to stop them. The only thing we can do is figure out when they're going to happen. We need to predict when they're going to happen.
Yes, and we haven't been able to do this even though people have been trying for hundreds of years, for thousands of years. It started in 8132 with a Chinese thinker who came up with a bronze urn that he used to be able to only detect earthquakes but not predict it. And some people in northern Italy tried using animals such as cows, sheep, and dogs to predict earthquakes by attaching sensors to these animals. So there are other ways, however, with the use of machines and tools that may be better able to detect earthquakes before they happen.
Indeed. So we've been talking about that, but of course the other thing that we need to prepare for is the actual earthquake itself. So even if we can predict an earthquake, we still have to experience the earthquake, so we need to protect ourselves, and that's what we're going to focus on in today's lesson, how you can avoid injury and even death if an earthquake happens. So let's get to it. Let's listen to the first part of our lesson, and then we'll be right back to talk about it.
Even our most advanced equipment is able to detect earthquakes only after they have already begun, so scientists must resort to warning people as quickly as possible after the initial jolt has occurred. It's vitally important, then, that people who live in high-risk areas know what to do when an earthquake hits or an early warning message arrives.
各位好，第一部分我们看到片语 resort to 加上名词或是动词 ing， 表示诉诸或是采用点点点。例如 One should never resort to violence to settle a dispute. 人绝对不能诉诸暴力来解决纷争。或是 Louisa lost her job, so she had to resort to asking her parents for money. Louisa 丢了工作，所以她得向父母借钱。再来我们看到单字 jolt， 这个字是名词，指猛烈摇晃或是震动。举例来说 The old carriage stopped in front of a manor with a jolt. 那辆老旧的马车一阵摇晃后停在一栋庄园前面。另外这个字也可以当动词，指震惊、撼动或是猛击，像是 The shock of failing a test jolted Eric into putting more effort toward his studies. 考试不及格的震惊打击了 Eric， 让他投入更多心力读书。
And welcome back to our lesson titled When the Earth Begins to Shake. And in the first sentence here it says, even our most advanced equipment is able to detect earthquakes only after they have already begun. So scientists must resort to warning people as quickly as possible after the initial jolt has occurred. So with the equipment that we have available, equipment here refers to a tool or a machine that is needed to do a particular job, such as detecting earthquakes or predicting earthquakes. So the equipment that we have right now are only able to detect earthquakes only after they have already begun. And that means when an earthquake does hit, we have to be able to prepare ourselves for it in order not to get hurt.
And remember, equipment is a non-count noun because there are so many different kinds of machines and devices that can do these sorts of things. So we consider this a non-count noun. Please do not add an S to this. So we've got advanced equipment, and it's able to detect earthquakes, but that only works when they've already started, when they've already begun. So scientists have to resort to warning people as quickly as possible after the initial jolt has occurred. So they have to resort to warning people. That means that's the only thing that they can do. That's the next measure, the next thing that they should do.
Yes, for instance, I can say after Sheila lost her job. She had to resort to borrowing money from her parents to pay her rent. That is not something that she wanted to do, but she had no other choice, so she had to resort to this choice.
And of course, we're talking about the initial jolt of an earthquake. Initial means the first one. So usually when an earthquake happens, nobody really knows it's coming until it actually starts happening. So yeah, when you're sitting there at your desk looking at your computer screen and the desk kind of moves a little bit or it even shakes, that is the initial jolt, the first actual sudden movement of the earthquake. A jolt is just a sudden movement of something.
Yes, so when this happens, it's vitally important that people who live in high-risk areas know what to do when an earthquake hits or an early warning message arrives. So being vitally important means to be extremely important. Vitally means extremely. So I could say, for instance, everything we do vitally affects our natural environment. So if we decide to buy bottled water or if we decide to keep the air conditioner on for 24 hours, everything we do affects the environment in an extreme way. So here, it's vitally important that people who live in areas that are prone to earthquakes, that they know what to do when an earthquake hits.
Sometimes, of course, I think most of us have this experience of a warning coming across our phones. Suddenly there's like this message on our phones and there's this buzzing and stuff like that. But usually that warning comes after the earthquake has already started or has already occurred. But you never know. Sometimes it might happen beforehand and we will have time to make preparations. Okay, that brings us to the end of the first part of our lesson. Let's move on now to the second part.
If you're inside when the event begins, the best thing you can do is simply stay put. Drop to the floor, find some cover, a table is a good option, and hold on tight. Don't run outside, as falling glass and debris could cause serious or fatal injury. If you're already outside, try to find an open area away from trees, buildings, and power lines, and then drop to the ground and stay there until the earthquake passes.
第二部分我们看到片语 stay put 表示原地不动或是待在原处。例如 Glenn's family moved to Hong Kong while he stayed put in Taiwan. Glenn 的家人搬到香港，他则留在台湾。或是 We were instructed to stay put and wait for the ambulance to arrive. 我们被指示待在原地等救护车来。再来我们看到名词 option 指选择或是选项。例如 You have two options. You can come with us to the beach or you can stay home. 你有两个选择，跟我们一起去海滩，或是待在家里，或是 This restaurant has quite a few vegetarian options on its menu. 这间餐厅的菜单有不少素食的选项。另外，以下补充两个包含 option 的相关片语。第一 ，leave somebody with no option but to 加上动词，表示让某人除了点点点之外别无选择。举例来说 ，After losing his job,The man was left with no option but to get unemployment payments from the government. 那名男子失去工作后，他除了向政府领取失业救济金外，别无选择。第二 ，can be a better option for 表示会是点点点比较好的选择。我们可以说 Hamsters don't require as much attention as other pets do, so they can be a better option for people who lead busy lives. 仓鼠不像其他宠物需要那么多照顾，所以他们会是生活忙碌的人更好的选择。接着我们看到单字 debris 这个字是名词，指残骸或是碎片。例如 After the typhoon, the roads were covered with debris. 台风过境后，道路上布满了残骸。或是 A team of volunteers has worked tirelessly to clear away rubble and other debris. 一组志工队不辞辛劳地清理瓦砾和残骸。
So what do you do when an earthquake hits or when you receive that early warning message, which is usually when the earthquake has already happened or when it's just about to happen when it's happening. So if that happens, you receive the early warning message, or when you feel an earthquake, then if you are inside when the event begins, the best thing you can do is simply stay put. Stay put means to stay where you are in the position that you are in. And you want to stay put also when a typhoon is happening outside. You don't want to be going out and going shopping or taking a walk in the midst of a typhoon. So to stay put means to stay where you are, and that is what you should do when an earthquake happens.
Yep, stay where you are, stay put. And drop to the floor, find some cover. A table is a good option. And hold on tight. So that's what you should do. First of all, stay put, stay where you are, and drop to the floor. Get down on the floor. And you also want to find some cover, find some protection. A table is a good option. So yeah, if you're in your kitchen or something like that, you can drop to the floor and then get under the kitchen table. That's a good choice. That's a good option. And then you need to hold on tight. Grab something so you don't get pushed around while the earthquake is happening.
That's right. So that's what you should do when an earthquake happens. You just stay where you are, you drop to the floor, you find some cover, and then also you don't want to run outside. Don't run outside, as falling glass and debris could cause serious or fatal injuries. So when an earthquake happens, you might have debris flying around. Falling glass is one kind of debris, and it can certainly cause serious or fatal injury. Now, a fatal injury is one that causes death. It's not a minor injury where you just get a broken ankle or something. A fatal injury is one in which you can die.
Right, and be careful here because we got the word debris, which I believe is French in origin. And French is weird because they always have these letters that are not pronounced, like debut and things like that. And so here we've got the word debris, and the S at the end is not pronounced. And debris itself is a plural noun, so indeed, do not say debris. That is wrong, but yes, indeed, falling glass and falling debris could cause serious injury or even fatal injuries, which of course would refer to injuries that cause death. You don't want to be involved in a fatal accident, do you? Now, if you're already outside, try to find an open area away from trees, buildings, and power lines, and then drop to the ground and stay there until the earthquake passes. Stay on the ground until the earthquake is over. So, yeah, you might already be outside when the earthquake happens. So, if that's the case, then try to find an open area that is not close to trees, that is not close to buildings, and that is not close to power lines. So those would be those towers that have those wires that carry electricity. And if they fall down, you might get electrocuted, so stay away from those. Like get in the middle of the street or something, but again, you don't want to be hit by cars either.
Yeah, and that is a little bit difficult to do when you're living in a big modern city, to go to an area, to find an area without buildings or power lines or trees, because even in the park you have trees. But you should probably think of a place, if you're near your office or near your home, already have a place in mind where you can go to when an earthquake hits, and that way you don't have to think about it last minute.
Indeed. And yeah, trees aren't going to fall down completely, but the branches might fall down, so that could be very dangerous. And of course, things could fall down from buildings, broken glass, or things falling off people's balconies. So yeah, stay away from those things and find an open area away from those things. And again, drop to the ground and stay there until the earthquake is over. Okay, that brings us to the end of the second part of our lesson for today. Let's move on now to the third part and wrap things up.
Until scientists can come up with a guaranteed way of predicting earthquakes far enough in advance, the best we can do is attempt to mitigate the damage. Knowing these simple steps may very well save your life the next time the earth around you starts to shake.
最后第三部分，我们看到动词 mitigate， 指减轻或是缓和危害等。例如 It is hoped that wind farms will mitigate the need for using fossil fuels. 希望风力发电厂会减轻对石化燃料的需求。或是 Measures need to be taken to mitigate the effects of global warming. 我们必须采取行动减缓全球暖化的影响。
So when it comes to earthquakes, until scientists can come up with a guaranteed way of predicting earthquakes far enough in advance, the best we can do is attempt to mitigate the damage. In other words, until now, scientists and inventors have not come up with a way of predicting earthquakes in a way that is infallible, in a way that is accurate. So the best thing that we can do right now in order to lessen the damage, in other words, to mitigate the damage, is to find ways of not getting hurt.
Indeed. So, yeah, we don't really know when they're going to happen, so we're still waiting for scientists to come up with a way to predict those earthquakes, and it's got to be a guaranteed way, a way that will work, that will not be inaccurate. And we're always hoping that weather people, weathermen or weather ladies or whatever, we're always hoping that they'll come up with a guaranteed way of predicting the weather, but that's so unpredictable. It's hard to predict the weather. And, of course, earthquakes are the same way. We need those scientists to come up with a guaranteed way of predicting earthquakes in advance. And until that day, the best we can do is attempt to mitigate the damage. And here, mitigate just means to have as little of it as possible, to reduce the damage as much as we can.
So you can use the word guaranteed in this way, for instance. You could say, it is guaranteed that you will get your money back if you want to return this item. And that's something that we often look for before we buy something. We want the guarantee. We want to be sure that we can get our money back if we want to return this product.
Yeah, I remember those old commercials on TV that said, you can have a money-back guarantee. If you're not satisfied with this product, then you can return it, no questions asked. There's a money-back guarantee if you're not satisfied. And we also have the word mitigate, is not really seen that often, but again, it just means to reduce the severity of something, to make something less serious or less painful. You might want to mitigate the suffering in the world if you are somebody who works for a charity or something like that.
Yes, and it's also often used in the legal world. For instance, when there is a case and somebody is suing somebody else for damages, then the person who is being sued might give some money to the person who claims to have suffered the damages by giving them money. And when you give money, you are mitigating the circumstances. You are mitigating the suffering or the misfortune that happened to the person.
And remember, mitigate is the verb, mitigation is the noun.
Yes, and knowing these simple steps may very well save your life the next time the earth around you starts to shake. So just keeping these tips in mind may be what will help you stay safe and healthy and unharmed the next time an earthquake hits in your area.
Right, so these, of course, again, are simple steps that you need to remember in case an earthquake hits. And again, we don't really know how to predict earthquakes, so we have to deal with them when they do happen. And just to review, of course, if you're inside, drop to the floor and find some cover like a table. I think I've also heard that you should go near elevators or something like that because that's where the building's structure is the strongest. And, of course, there are other precautions that you can take. I'm sure most of you know about these things because y'all live here in Taiwan. And I'm from a place in the United States that is not earthquake prone. So I guess you guys know more about this than I do.
Yeah, and I've heard a lot of different opinions about how to protect oneself from earthquakes. I also heard that it's a good idea to lie in your bathtub because when you're in your bathtub, you're lying flat. Anything that can fall on top of you will be supported by the bathtub, by the edges of the bathtub. So whatever falls is not going to hit you.
Or if it falls on top of you and you get stuck inside a collapsed structure, maybe you'll still have some air to breathe or something like that. So yeah, talk to your parents, talk to your teachers about what you should do best. But again, that's what you should do if you're inside. And again, as we just said, if you're outside, try to find an open area away from trees, buildings, and power lines. Drop to the floor, drop to the ground, and stay there until the earthquake is over. But you also need to be careful about those deadly aftershocks. So they could happen again soon after the main earthquake.
That's true. Those aftershocks can be even more violent and stronger than the actual earthquakes themselves.
Yeah, those are called aftershocks. So again, here to wrap things up, it says, knowing these simple steps may very well save your life. So may very well, you could also say could very well. They could indeed save your life. If you don't know those simple steps, you might be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and you might get injured as a result of an earthquake. And, of course, we don't want that to happen to any of you out there. There are enough bad things happening in the world, and we don't need another bad thing like an earthquake to kill even more people. Okay, that brings us to the end of our lesson for today. It's time now to listen to our Chinese teacher.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文一开始提到，即使是最先进的设备，也只能在地震发生后才侦测得到，所以科学家没有其他办法，只能在开始摇晃后尽快警告人们。好，文中它用到形容词 initial 是来表达说最初的、开始的。那文中写到这个 initial jolt 就是表达最初一开始的那种摇晃震动。好，那这边我们是要介绍 initial 的字首字根。首先 it 这个字根呢，它的意思是 go， 就是表达走啊、行走或是去的意思。像 visit 拜访、orbit 轨道、circuit环形路线，这几个单字里面都有 it 这个字根哦。好，那么在 initial 这个字当中，它的字首 in 表示进入， it 表示走，那么 ial 是形容词字尾。同学们可以试着联想，当你从入口开始往里面进去，那就表示你是从起点开始的。我们用这样去联想说 initial 这个字它表示开始的、最初的。顺便补充几个有相同字根的单字。第一个是 exit， 就是出口的那个字，它的字首 ex 表示向外，那么 it 表示走，所以 exit 就是出口、离开或是有那种退场的语义咯。那么第二个补充的是 transit，Transit transit 它的字首 trans 表示贯穿，那么 it 表示走，所以 transit 它就有那种过境、通过的意思，像 transit passenger 就可以表达过境旅客哦。好，再来补充第三个是 ambition ambition。好，那它的字首 amb 有那种 around 就是周围、围绕的意思，字根 it 表示走，那么 ion 是名词字尾。这个字在拉丁文原本的意思是指四处游说啊，以取得选票。那我们就可以用那种四处走动来游说，去争取他人支持自己的目标理想，用这种方式去联想说 ambition 它有那种抱负、野心或是梦想的意思。好，我们另外要介绍的是表达尽可能怎么样的句型。第一个，我们可以在 as 什么什么 as possible， 或者是 as 什么什么 as one can， 在中间摆入形容词或副词，这时候是表达尽量怎么样，尽可能怎么样。像课文用到 as quickly as possible， 就是相当于 as quickly as they can， 去表达尽快。举例来说，She keeps her bedroom as clean as she can， 也可以说She keeps her bedroom as clean as possible。 她尽可能的让房间来保持干净。第二个句型呢，我们可以在 as 什么什么 as possible， 或者是 as 什么什么 as one can， 中间摆入 many 加复数可数名词，或者是摆入 much 加不可数名词，去表达尽可能多怎么样。来看两个例句哦。 The doctor advised her to get as much rest as possible. 医生建议她尽可能多休息。Kevin tries to read as many books as he can in his free time. Kevin 设法在空闲时间呢，尽可能多看书。好，那以上是今天重点整理，我们回顾今天单字吧。
Equipment. Hobbies that require a lot of special equipment can be quite expensive. Initial. The initial cost of this car is high, but it is cheap to run. Vitally. Educating people on how to safely prepare food is vitally important. Option. When Mike's computer crashed, his only option was to write the essay again. Debris. After the earthquake, Fred searched through the debris for his photo album. Fatal. The fatal accident was caused by a driver who had fallen asleep. Guaranteed. We work hard to make sure that the safety of our clients is guaranteed.
Discussion starter starts now!
Here's our discussion starter for today. Do you think scientists will ever develop a reliable method of predicting earthquakes in advance? Why or why not?
Well, I'm confident that scientists will eventually develop a method of predicting earthquakes. I say this because anything is possible with technology. However, I'm not sure how reliable that method will be because there is nothing guaranteed in life.
Well, I don't think scientists will ever be able to predict earthquakes far in advance because the world is just too big. Earthquakes are just too unpredictable, and we can't really see underneath the Earth's crust. We just have no idea what's going on down there. We can just feel vibrations and stuff like that, and I don't think that's enough to go on. Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program, and please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Roger.
I'm Helen.
See you next time.